They were saying that, they were struggling with how things were going. It was hard to be positive in the situation. It's like, yeah, but that's life. Like, you're getting a great crash course lesson right now. Like, stuff isn't going right for you. You have to practice positivity. There's lots of things that I have to experience on a day-to-day basis that's like, I don't really want to do this, or this is not fun, enjoyable process to me, but it's all part of kind of the bigger picture. You really find out who you are when stuff isn't going right.
Welcome to the Jamodi podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the head boys basketball coach at Ponder High School, Ryan Russell. Coach Russell is in his 12th year of coaching, third as a head coach. He played college ball at Nelson University, formerly Southwestern Assemblies of God in Waxahachie, Texas. In 2011, he was the recipient of the Champion of Character Award for SAGU's athletic program. Coach Russell began his coaching career at SAGU as the associate women's head coach for the 2011-12 season. From 2013 through 2021, he was on staff at Northwest High School, where the Texans saw tremendous success. Coach Russell coached one season at 6A Keller Central, helping the Chargers to the regional quarterfinals and their best postseason run in school history. As a head coach, he led the Bridgeport Bulls, doubling the team's win total from year 1 to year 2. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for giving up your time. I know how much you've got going on, opening up like you said, new school at Ponder.
Yeah, that brand new high school. So yeah,
that's awesome. So what happened to the old school?
It's the junior high now. So
nice.
The junior high, it's the junior high now, and then the old junior high is like the upper elementary. So it's 4th and 5th grade, and then the lower elementary grades stay the same campus. So
awesome, man. Well, yeah, and like I said, I just really thank you for giving up your time coming on talking hoops. Like, this is awesome.
Well, thank you. I'm a longtime listener of the Jamodi podcast, so I get to gain some knowledge, and I know the type of coaches you have on here. So I don't know if I stack up. So I feel really honored to be invited. So,
well, first of all, you stack up. I feel that way every talk on here, that I don't feel qualified enough to talk to the person across the computer. But I think, with your experience that you've had, like, I didn't realize that you were at SAGU for so long, and I love the coach there, a big fan of him. And then going to Bridgeport and now moving to what I consider probably one of the most storied high school programs in Dallas-Fort Worth. Ponder's had some amazing success. So I don't know. I think you're kind of big time.
Well, I'm big time now that I got the Ponder tag, but before then, I'm still kind of on cloud nine. There's several days, especially after it happened, that I'd wake up and, me and my wife would be talking and be like, is this real? Because I do know how, big of an opportunity it is. So I'm excited.
What is it like working at a school where there is such a strong basketball tradition and such a strong basketball culture already? Because I feel like for most of us, especially going to a new place, we're trying to build that. And at Ponder, I think it's been there.
Yeah. I mean, really, that's kind of the situation I was at Bridgeport. Is there was a little bit of time where they've had some really successful teams and stuff, but by and large, it was kind of a struggling, program and stuff. And so coming in there to establish the culture and really just getting kids to play more and understand that, and the Dallas-Fort Worth area is really competitive for hoops. And if you're not playing constantly, working on your skill and stuff, it's just really hard to be competitive. And so we were moving towards that, teaching kids how to play the game and especially trying to get the middle school and the younger kids involved and I brought in tournaments to our facilities so that it was in their backyard. They didn't have to drive anywhere. So just doing a lot of that stuff. Here, we're so close to Denton. There's so many kids that play outside of school already. Like when I got hired, it went public 2 days before school was done. They already had a 7th grade and 8th grade and two high school teams already in line for leagues. Like parents were somewhat coordinating that. They had 4th and 5th grade teams that were already playing in the Denton leagues and stuff, and kind of Coach Eddie's, the NTBL, tournaments and stuff like that. So, all that stuff being set up and kids having an expectation of playing all the time. Like, man, it's been fun. Like every day you walk into the gym, like we have lots of kids that want to play, and we do breakfast club every day. Every day, 6:30 in the morning, we have breakfast club open, and we'll do weights or open gym after school 5 days a week. And, we probably average 30, 35 kids at each of those sessions. And I mean, we've had some open gyms already where we have 45, 50 kids there between middle school and high school age kids. So it's fun to walk into a packed gym and have kids that are really excited about hoops. And now you're just kind of teaching them the style of play and the style of basketball that you like to see that will think kind of, push the needle and being able to hopefully get another state championship or 2 or 3 or 4.
Right. That is the expectation there, right? That you're competing for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when I got the job, a lot of people were like, now, coach, you got to understand it's a whole lot different. And I'm like, good. Like, I like one, I place a high expectation on myself. Like, I want it to be a great program. And, somebody that was really instrumental in my life was Gerald Sledge at Keller Central when I worked for him. Like, he's so just good at making it a great experience for kids and going above and beyond for players in his program, coaches in his program to try to make it, a really special experience. And so to have that friendship and mentorship and to be in that program, I think is really that was kind of the last piece that I really needed before I felt like I was ready to kind of take on a head coaching role. And without that experience, I definitely would not be ready and probably in the situation that I'm in if it wasn't for somebody like him that kind of showed me that piece of it and to the degree that he does.
Yeah. So I'm going to try not to sound too envious of the numbers that you have coming to Open Gym and Breakfast Club, but I would imagine a lot of coaches on here, they hear that, and a lot of DFW people are going to know about Ponder and the history there. And I think the question that maybe some of us have is, okay, how do I create that at Grapevine Faith Christian School? How do I create that at Bridgeport and or places like that? And so I'm going to ask you, even though I know you're new at Ponder and you're probably learning every week, more things about the community and the history of the program, but how do we create something like, I think of it like Lipan, like that's what, like you drive through Lipan and there's a hoop in every
exactly.
The gym's open 7 days a week there, like 24 hours a day. So how do we create that, Coach?
Part of it is just your availability and your personality. And this was kind of something from Coach Sledge as well. Just if we expect a kid to be a gym rat, then like you as a coach have to be a gym rat yourself. Like you have to be available to open the gym. You have to be willing to be there before and after school. Because, in situations like Bridgeport and here where we got multi-sport athletes, there's only a certain amount of time that they have available to them. If I'm not around, I feel like it's counterproductive and it's not realistic for a kid to just, hey, go get some shots up. Well, where, coach? In my driveway? No, I'll be there. I'm here in the morning, here after, if I come up and work on the weekends or something, I'll try to, message the guys like kind of high school age and stuff and message him and say, hey, I'm going to be up there for a couple hours working. If y'all want to come up and shoot, come on, I'll be here. I'll open the door for you and stuff. So I think it's really important. Like a coach just has to be a gym rat if they want their players to be a gym rat.
I think those are some really good ideas. And I think you're right on the money with the availability.
Yeah.
Like, just hope that they're getting work in. Or, man, I wish they'd be in the gym more. Well, the great question is, like, extreme ownership, turn that around. Are you opening the gym more? Are you making it available for them? And then you said your personality, which I would also say, like, make it fun.
Yeah.
Make it fun to be there. Like, make the big time where you're at, make it the place to be, make it a place where they enjoy hanging out. And part of that is maybe like whether you have a lot of funds to put into your facilities or you have very few, but make it as nice as you can and as welcoming as you can. And I think those are some good ideas.
Yeah, I definitely think that, trying to make it fun and there's different phases of the season. Like it's, in this preseason, it's starting to get to a little more like role definition, team concepts a little bit more, but there's still a lot of trying to be player development, giving them a little bit of more leash and freedom to experiment stuff. And then especially after the season, when those guys that are returning, some of those guys don't need to fulfill the same role. We need them to be more aggressive. We need them to take more shots and stuff. And so somewhat being okay as a coach to go, okay, experiment, try, we're going to show you different solutions of how to get finishes and, things like that of footwork. And when you kind of make that happen and give them a little bit more freedom, let them make mistakes through the process. And then those that improve and kind of show that they can handle maybe an increased role for as far as offensive shots and stuff like that. Then once we start getting into the season, now we kind of have to go with what we have. But just understanding there's different periods throughout the season and throughout the whole skill development. If a lot of times of my development was just me going to play at a rec center and play against people, and I got to experiment. I didn't get yelled at if I screwed up. I'd be mad at myself. I'd be mad that I made a bad pass or a bad shot. And, in my head, I'd be going, all right, I got to, fix that. But there was still a freedom and a fun of just, I'm going to go play basketball because I love playing basketball. And then doing that day in and day out, like you find that you're a player and you can do stuff like, and you start getting confidence from that consistency in your work and your craft.
I think you're right on the money with the fun that players can have with their own development. And it's not like I don't think players are just losing their joy for the game on their own. I actually think we are right along there with them, sometimes stealing the joy away from them. And part of that is if we're asking them to push the limits, we're asking them to try to spend time and improve, but then we're hammering them for mistakes and we're hammering them for maybe making the wrong choices. There has to be that bike riding time, the time where, like, when we all learned how to ride it, when we fell over, our parents would say, get off the bike, you're done for the day. No, they said, get back on and try again. And I wonder how many of us don't allow our players to make those mistakes. And then in doing that, we take that joy away from them. And man, what a great goal is to make it more fun.
Yeah, that is probably like my number one, maybe internal struggle as a coach of like, where is that line of kind of going, all right, this is what we need to win in this moment and for our team to maximize this opportunity. And then versus what's just going to crush kind of a kid's spirit and willingness to go all out, get out of their comfort zone, keep trying, keep working, working at something that hopefully they're showing up every day because they love it. And, not everybody's role is the same. And, if you've ever been on a team, like you understand that, and there's a little bit of give and take. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of guys in the NBA that can do a lot of things at a high level, but there's other guys on their team that can do it at even more high levels. So they have to, sacrifice for the sake of the team. But also these kids that we're coaching, they're very new in their development process. They haven't played the game very much. Hopefully, like in my case, they've been playing since they were in third and fourth and fifth grade, and they have a good skill foundation and background in the game. But also, like, just because they play for 3 or 4 years doesn't mean they're experts at this. There's a lot of ugliness to this game that you got to let them get through and not steal the joy because you're just sitting there like, you turned it over, you missed a shot, that's a bad shot, that's this, that's that. And like, and if we just drill them to death, like I think if I showed up at a rec center to go play basketball, and there was some guy, just random guy that showed up and said, hey, we're going to run drills today and not let you play, I'd probably find a new rec center to go to.
My shoulder hurts. I'm getting
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
My mom's calling me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of think of it in the same way of like, if I show up every day and there's not an element of basketball decision-making competition that goes along with our development and practices, that just takes the joy away from it. If it's just monotonous one-on-0 drills all the time, like there is a time and a place for that. And a lot of players that really want to go far will spend a lot of one-on-0 time. And I'm going to provide them time to do that. But when it's team time, when it's decision-making, really learning how to teach the game, it's a very ugly, chaotic process. Very ugly.
That's a great point.
I was talking to my assistant coach yesterday because practice was really ugly. And I just said, like, everything inside of me is telling me to just abandon ship with what we're trying to do with these guys because it's really ugly and I need it to look better. Because, again, we're state championship or bust kind of mentality around here. But also at the same time, like, I believe in what we're doing, kind of the style that we're trying to implement. And I know it's going to pay off. It's just, there's a lot of ugliness in the process.
Yeah.
But, and I have to.
So much gold there, like so many things to go through. And I think one is you and I keeping in mind that we are thinking about February and March and where it can be. And that looking that way allows us to look past how it looks right now. I think sometimes starting out, we want it to look like February and March, like at the beginning. And it's just, that's just not how growth happens. That's not how improvement happens. It is ugly. And so, I mean, one of the biggest things that we can do is embrace that process. But I agree with you with that line as somebody that loves individual skill work. And I like to push the envelope with that and maybe get some things that some coaches would say is not game-like, get some med balls and things around. And they're kicking the ball all over the place. And sometimes I wonder, like, if a coach was to walk in here, would they think that this is a serious place of development and guys are getting better? Would they be like, what the crap is going on here? I think you just have to get to a point where what are you comfortable with? And then I thought about this. What was the guy's name that was the coach of the Saints for a little bit? Now he's with the Broncos. I think the Cowboys wanted to get him.
Sean Payton?
Yeah, Sean Payton. So when he was with the Saints and Drew Brees was there and they were about to have a really good team, he had a goal for the team. And he said, our goal this year is to have really high energy and to enjoy every day. I think if that's your goal, then you're okay with the ugly. And you can maybe where that line is, maybe you can go over to the side of even more chaos and not get bogged down. But I think for me, that's a goal for this year, is for our team to enjoy every day. And notice, like, there's no winning in that. There's no championships in that. But man, I think if you can do that, it'll end up leading to it. But what we can't do, and I think you've nailed it in a bunch of ways, is get in our own way, get in our players' own way of development because of how we think it should look.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think especially as a young coach, you want it to look pretty, especially like if that's one thing I could go back and, slap myself in the face when I was just a middle school coach kind of coming up, is let them experiment more. Stop being so controlling. And because you do kind of fear, you want there to be organization. You want there to be structure. You want to have discipline, like you're young and you're also trying to come off as you know what you're doing and all that stuff. But I think you really have to let some of the control go. Be okay with going like, I know what I'm doing as a coach. I know this works. It just looks really bad. Like, it looks really bad. And if somebody wants to doubt it or complain or say it's not right, like, okay, you're entitled to your opinion, but there's a lot of ways to, go about skill development, and everybody has their own way of doing it. And if the kids are enjoying it and they're really competitive and they're having fun, like, I think they're going to get a whole lot better by the time, February and March rolls around than if I wanted to look perfect every single day, because the game is ugly. The games, if you're wanting to win big time games, it comes down to, can you win games when you're not playing your best? And when stuff is not going right, can you still kind of find a way to have a better score at the end of the game? But it might not be pretty, but it's survive and advance at that moment. That competitive kind of spirit, I think, gets you through a lot of stuff. And so if you're building that in your workouts of like, guys, it's bad right now, but let's find a way to, that was one thing we were talking about the other day. Hey, it was a really bad day today. Like, it wasn't pretty. And the biggest thing that was frustrating is our communication level went down. Like, y'all all started getting mad. The energy level dropped out of the building. And then now we're all just mad because stuff isn't going well. And then you're not communicating. And then everything gets really bad. Your communication and your teammate skills, and really a life skill, when stuff is going bad, like, you really figure out who you are and what person you are. And if you stop communicating and you stop trying and you stop competing because it's just not pretty or the way that you want it to go, well, then, like, you're just not going to accomplish very much in life. And if you can learn it now in a game that's really, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a stressful event, hopefully by the time that, you got a family to provide for and bills to pay and all that stuff, that hopefully when, man, it's just a crappy string of days and, family member dies, there's a lot of stuff, like years, months, where it seems like it's one thing after another. Can you be a positive person that shows up and continues to just try to do your best and have a positive attitude, even though stuff isn't going right? If you can learn that through basketball, man, you're going to be so far ahead of other people in life. Like, it's amazing.
That's a great example of finding culture moments throughout practice, instead of a culture moment being only the quote that, and there's nothing wrong with a quote at the beginning of a practice schedule that you read and you set the tone. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but we have to have our eyes open and be ready to zoom out and lean into those culture moments, because you could have left that whole interaction going back to the fact that you're practicing at a pace, at a level that is chaotic and is ugly. Like, that's really good, because you want them to feel and deal with those mistakes in practice. If it's at a different level and it's clean and those mistakes happen in a game, but it's maybe the first time or they don't know how to deal with them, man, that's frustrating. But the fact that you're able to take what was lacking is the communication with their teammates because of the droop that was happening, because of the negative plays, and tie that back to real life stuff. Like, I think that's the goal. Like, that's the art, maybe the art of the coaching. The science is what's happening on the floor, but the art is, how does this apply to later on? So I love hearing that connection there, man.
And that's like something that, like, in the back of my head, I do a really bad job of it sometimes, but like, my goal, hopefully at the end of practice, and again, I've been terrible at it, but I really would like to, at the end of practices and games, stop talking about the game, stop talking about the basketball, and let's just talk about life. Let's just talk about the type of people we are, the core values of what was exhibited, what maybe was lacking, and really try to tie those things back. And we get to a practice and, man, I'm just thinking about, we're not hitting the pitch ahead enough, or, our spacing's bad. And I start getting on a tangent of, basketball terminology. And I always find myself like, just shut up and talk about core values. Like, we'll address the basketball stuff the next day. Let's try to connect it back to being a better person. And that's kind of a goal of mine. And
I got to share a little bit of, that's a goal of mine too. And I think there's one way that we try to do it here at Faith. Is all right? Can I share it with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So we want to have a culture of celebration, and whether you win or lose, there are still good things that happen. At the end of a practice, whether it was an A, B, C, or D practice, there's still good things. So to get me off of the basketball part, I just simply ask, hey, what celebrations do you have? They know that the celebrations aren't just what happens on the floor with the ball, but it can also be about some of those intangibles, and it can tie right back to our culture. So if excellence is one of our pillars, then and I say, hey, what celebrations do you have? And let's say little Timmy says, well, I saw Johnny just really going all out at this moment. Well, I can tie that back to excellence. Hey, I love that. That's one of our standards. The thing I love about the celebrations is them celebrating each other lifts me up. Like if I'm in a funk, if I'm frustrated, if I want to nail them in that moment, celebrations takes me out of it to where I can almost like recalibrate. And so that's a way that I think we've been able to do it a little bit.
I appreciate that. I'm going to have to put it in some practice. I try to get them to talk a little bit like today, hey, give me your reflection on today's practice and, give me a positive and a negative, and just to try to hear their input. And I think once they all start kind of, your culture's kind of being put in place and being implemented, when all of the kids somewhat start talking the same, they start having the same verbiage, they start noticing some of the same things that you're noticing or that you've been pointing out to them kind of day in and day out, and they kind of gravitate towards that. I think you kind of start to pick up clues that, okay, we are making a difference, and some of this stuff is starting to set in, which is a good thing to see.
No doubt. What we got to be careful about, though, is getting fooled into thinking that our culture is growing or is being shared by our players when only one or two are really they're the outgoing alphas of the group that are comfortable speaking in front of the group, and they're the only ones answering your questions, but they're saying the right things. I think I've been fooled before to think, yeah, like that's it. You're right. We got it. We're going. But the one or two are the only ones that really believe it. I think, like you said, when you're getting hands raised all over the place, and maybe that's a deal where like my eyes are looking maybe for those guys that are usually a little bit more quiet or not just settling in with just one of those loud ones. But I think we can get fooled sometimes.
Sure. No doubt about that.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
One thing we've talked a little bit about culture, started diving in. I think culture building activities can be a way to catapult or push culture forward, but it's not the main thing, right? Like culture is 1,000 little things that you say and do with your team every day, but those activities can be huge. So what's one culture building activity that you really like?
Like for us, and we're still kind of getting into it and trying to establish it because it is first year and stuff, but I really like to get their input on like, what does a winner and a loser look like in y'all's opinion? Like we'll sit in a classroom, we'll talk like, well, you define what a winner, like mentality and everything, mentality, what does it look like out on the floor in life, all that stuff versus, winner mentality, loser's mentality, compare those two and then try to tie it back in. And I've got some ideas and acronyms and stuff like that I think kind of tie together just because that's what I like to do. That's kind of how my mind goes to stuff. And so I'm just kind of different things like that, I guess, just communicating in classrooms and discussing those things. And yeah. I mean, that's kind of my one big thing is we just discuss those. And then also the expectations, I guess, like expectations of what do we do on, like, what does a game need to look like? Like if I walk into a locker room before a game, like what does it need to look like for y'all to be mentally prepared? Or if we're on the bus, how much time do you need to be mentally prepared? Does it need to be completely quiet? Do we need to, turn the lights off? Like, I think every kid's different. And like for me, when I was playing, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to have any interaction. I wanted to put my music in, focus, say some prayers in my head and kind of just be very introverted that way before I played a game. And, some people aren't like that. If they sit there and they think too much, like they just start getting psyched out. And so if you could let them be their personality and understand how they are, hopefully it'll help them to perform a little bit better. So, we talk about different things of like, I kind of let them set some of that stuff. And through my questioning, we can lead them into a direction that's somewhat of a happy medium, where it's not just a circus, but it allows them to be a little bit more of their personality, to hopefully feel like they're getting prepared for games, and also that they have a voice in the situation. If we want it to be a good experience, like it needs to be something that they enjoy doing and stuff like that. And even things for like being late, those little kind of like minor punishments and stuff, like we'll talk about that as a team and try to come up. And I've had players say stuff that's a lot harsher than what I was going to give them. And you kind of find out like, okay, well, I guess this, they're serious about this too. And like, okay, well, we can't spend all practice running because you showed up 1 minute late, but there might need to be a consequence and an expectation that we're going to be there on time and all that stuff. So just that stuff. And then something I stole from Sledge at Central is after a workout, we all go around, we give each other high fives, tell each other good job. It might have been bad practice, but it's going to be the one time that somebody gets maybe a pat on the back and an attaboy, and trying to it might have been a bad practice, but starting to set the tone for, let's not just beat a dead horse and talk basketball and be angry all the time. There's a bigger focus outside of hoops.
The thing that jumped out at me, and you kind of slipped it in, was that you take them to the classroom. And I think changing environments is a really good idea. When Coach K is in practice, they rarely huddle at the same place. He'll move it all over kind of strategically. I think there's times to have these types of talks in the gym. There's times to do them in the weight room. There's times in the locker room. There's times to take them to a classroom. The nice thing about the classroom is I feel like it's where they spend time learning. So it's a good way to get them already in that mode, whether it's film, whether it's note taking in the classroom. Yeah. Love the question method, because instead of us just saying, hey, get this down, man, let's help them get to the place, lead them to the place where we want them to be. You started off by saying, a question like, what does a winner versus a loser look like? I love those types of questions. And what it made me think of is culture breakers. So many times, and Shawnee Harley talked about that, so many times we just focus on our culture and the good things that are going to come from it. This is what it's going to look like when our culture is right. Yeah. And that's okay. We want to set, like, that's what a winner looks like. But there's going to be times when we're losers. There's going to be times when culture breaks down. It's not a matter of when it breaks or if it breaks down, but when. And we need to know what it's like. So if toughness is one of our pillars, what does it look like when toughness isn't there, when it breaks down? Well, that might look like when we're making excuses. Yeah, like making excuses isn't tough. And what are we going to do when a player or a group of us, maybe myself, when we're making excuses? We got to confront that. We got to talk about that. I think when you have those kind of questions, you get to not just talk about the fairy tale land where everything works out the way you want. You talk about real life and how things are going to break down.
I was having that conversation with like a student today a little bit. They were saying that, they were struggling with how things were going. It was hard to be positive in the situation. It's like, yeah, but that's life. Like, you're getting a great crash course lesson right now. Like, stuff isn't going right for you. You have to practice positivity. There's lots of things that I have to experience on a day-to-day basis that's like, I don't really want to do this, or this is not fun, enjoyable process to me, but it's all part of kind of the bigger picture. And you find out again, like, you really find out who you are when stuff isn't going right. If you can be a better person, and that's where I think real competence comes from, is like when you just mess up and mess up and mess up and you still find a way to get through it. And then you learn along the way, like, you just look back and go like, I accomplished something hard. Like, my hardest teachers, it was awful taking their class. Like, it was terrible. Like, you were always writing papers and reading and having to think a lot and studying all the time. And it was awful. But when you got to the end of the course and you made the grade and hopefully passed, you look back and you go like, that teacher was awesome. Like I learned so much more, just not only content wise, but about myself because I did something hard. Like I think we steal a lot of that from kids, and that goes from coaches to parents and everything. Like I don't want my son to grow up and just be a baby and be a whiner and complainer. Above all else, other than loving God and, being a Christian and following that right path, I just want him to be like a tough, confident person. And if, stuff isn't going right, that he's not going to sit there and whine and be a baby his whole life, that he's going to have some toughness and grit about him. And so
a little alarm kind of just like went off on my head thinking that message that you just were telling that kid, or maybe you're telling your team that, like, guys, hey, we need to handle mistakes well in our life. When things aren't going right, what do we do? Like, that's a great message. We got to be careful, though, that we're not coaching them almost in the opposite way of blowing up at their mistakes, making their mistakes seem like it's the worst thing that can happen to our program, and you are letting us down, and you're such a bad player that you shouldn't. That's why you're not on the floor. Like before we know it, the great message that we're telling them, maybe in a meeting, or the words that we have on our wall or that are on the back of their chest, or back of our shirts, like, are we living those out with how we're actually coaching them? And it just made me think a lot about the beginning of our talk, of how ugly the practices are feeling right now and how many mistakes are being made. Great opportunities to help them, to reinforce what you're just talking about, what's going to happen in life. Like, use those moments. And it sounded like you did in that moment right there in practice. But I think we sometimes break down our own culture that we're trying to set, because we do say the right things, but like more is caught than taught. Like, how are we acting in a game? If in our culture, every player has to shoot an open shot. It doesn't matter who the best player is or the worst. If you're open, that is the goal of our offense, is to create that look. You shoot it. That's an expectation. Well, when that player does it, do I act upset when they miss? Do I sit down or slump when they miss? Or do I just clap and say, beautiful, next, right? Like, what I'm saying to them, I got to make sure that my actions are following up with that.
I think kind of one of like my favorite kind of sayings, and something I try to keep in the back of my head, is like, what like a leader does in moderation, like its followers do in excess. So if I cuss in practice, like I feel like a lot of kids are going to cuss, all the time. And, my parents grew up, they didn't drink. I've never drank before. Just, it was something they didn't do. I didn't get used to being in that environment, right or wrong, however you feel about, that situation. But there's just so many little things that if you're a complainer in front of players all the time and you always whine and fuss about the refs, what do you think they're going to do? Like, you're giving them the green light and the go ahead of just blaming it on somebody else all the time. I don't want my fate to be in the hands of a guy with black and white stripes on. Like, I want to control my fate, and what he calls, I might not agree with, but I'm not going to sit there and try to just beat a dead horse because I feel like he missed it. I can't control what he called. And there's going to be a lot of things in life that happen that I can't control. I did everything right. I did exactly what I was supposed to do. Somebody else got the promotion. There's so many situations that happen that, man, you just control what you can control. Your attitude, your effort, try to do the best you can, honor God with the way that you're living your life. And somehow it all works out. There's been so many things that I wish I'd have got along the way. You kind of find out, like, at the end of it, you go like, good thing I didn't get that. I needed to learn this, and this to be able to be ready and have the character to be prepared for what was coming along the way. And in the moment it stinks, but God has a plan, and sometimes it's hard to relinquish that control.
A lot of good nuggets right there. I love that quote that you had. And I think that really ties well with that extreme ownership. Whatever your players are doing, like, you've got to turn, good or bad, like turn that around and point it right back at yourself. If they are whining to the officials, what are you doing? And if you don't, but you haven't set that standard for them, well, maybe then there's a lack of discipline across the board. But if you consider yourself to be a disciplined coach, but they're doing that just like little kids, man, they're learning those behaviors from somewhere. They're patterning themselves from somewhere.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to borrow that, coach.
I mean, that was one of the best things that I feel like my parents did for me is like, if I had a teacher that I didn't like and I, complain about them and stuff, I mean, they basically in a roundabout way just told me to shut up. I mean, it was just like, well, have you prayed? Have you prayed for them? Have you prayed for that situation? Like they might be difficult.
Don't you love hearing that?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just like, yeah, I haven't. Okay. Like that's not what I'm asking for right now. But it was always just like, there's always going to be people that you don't maybe like or you don't gel with. How are you going to get along with those people? Like, what are you going to do to try to make sure that you're being the best person possible to be able to get through that situation? And, I felt like it taught me a lot of resiliency and hard work and stuff like that to be able to move on and get through tough situations. So
I think it's a good example too of sometimes a door closing, but then you being, pretty happy that it did. Something else came along. And you and I are both believers. And so we don't really believe in coincidence and that there is a plan and God can work. Well, his plan is going to happen and he can work through any situation and create good out of it. So, but it made me think, and I don't know if I've ever shared this before, but was how faith, this job actually happened. I was with Wes Watson at McKinney High School as a varsity assistant, and it was about April of my 5th year there, and I had already decided, I'm newly married to Jana, and I had already decided that like I'm not going to go for any jobs, I'm not going to look anymore. All of a sudden, McKinney Boyd opens up. And that's a safe job at the time. I was probably the longest, like the oldest varsity assistant in the MISD area. Like it really did seem like if I put my name in there, I got a good shot at it. And Coach Watson came to me and was like, Matt, do you want to do that? And I did pray about it. I just never felt like I needed to do that, or that I should do that. So I told Coach Watson, no, I'm not going to put my name in the hat. My high school coach, Coach Thomas, and we were talking about it. He said, Matt, are you sure you don't want to do that? Because he was like, 6-8 jobs just don't come around all the time. And he actually told me he thought I was making a huge mistake. And so then after he told me that, I thought, oh crap, like what have I done? And so I did kind of maybe freak out, but I was at peace and let it go. 2 weeks later, a guy named Randy Feemster that coached at Trinity Christian Academy for a long time called me and said, Matt, have you ever heard about Grapevine Faith? I said, no. Is that a private school? He's like, yeah. And I was like, I don't do private schools. And because we would play Prestonwood and all those, and I was a public school guy. And he said, no, just check out on the website, see what it's about, and then let me know what you think. Looked at grapevinefaith.com, what the pillars were, what are the schools about. And it felt like a punch in my stomach in a good way of like, that's it. Like, that's where I want you to be. And I called him back. I was like, yeah, I'd like to interview for that. And just to make a quick story, though, like I went to my first head coaching interview. And on the way there, I was listening to a podcast at Gateway Church. And in the podcast, it wasn't the normal pastor. It was somebody else. And he kind of stopped his sermon. He said, we need to stop giving edited testimonies. They do nothing for nobody. And and then he kept going through his message. While I'm sitting outside of faith, as a 30-year-old, never been in a head coach's interview before. And I had no clue what to say, because those that do know me a little bit or know the leftover story, like I kind of screwed up a ton in my 20s. Like I didn't live a very good life and made a lot of mistakes, and God pulled me out of that. And so even though at the time I felt qualified to come to Grapevine Faith, I didn't know if they'd have a huge problem with my past. So I'm sitting outside wrestling, like, do I tell the truth or do I just now? And the book had already come out. And so, like, they could read it and they could find out. I heard that message and I walked up to, and I'm sitting in front of the principal, the AD, the campus pastor, and the president of the school. And all of them are like pastors and like they're qualified. They could do that. And so I'm sitting in front of them. I said, guys, listen, I don't really know what I'm supposed to tell you. I had my packet, my folder of all my basketball stuff, but I said, I don't know what to say. Like, but I just heard this on the podcast and I feel like I'm just supposed to tell you the truth. So grew up in a Christian home. The last 9 years of my life have been a train wreck, all my doing. And I went through those things. And then I got in the basketball part. Sure enough, 2 days later, I find out that after I got the job, that they had already had the assistant athletic director read the book to find out everything in there. So if I had come in and tried to act like I was somebody I'm not, they already knew. But that door, like, what if I would have taken the Boyd job? I'm not saying it would have been bad, and maybe God could have used me there, but I didn't feel like I needed to do that. And everybody kind of was telling me that was a huge mistake. And now I've been in faith for 12 years and at a place where I do feel like I've been called to be, and I don't know for how long, but sorry for that whole story. Just, we can't get that time back, but
No,
it just made me think of it.
No, that's great. There's always, I think, again, we kind of have a plan in our head, what we want to happen. Obviously, in the moment, it feels like a letdown. It feels like, how is this all going to work out? I've been through enough things to know that, like, it's all going to work out in the end. And, if for some reason, it doesn't work out here, I don't know why it won't. I'm going to work as hard as possible. But if for some reason something happens here, then there's a plan and a scheme, something bigger along the way, and I need to be somewhere else. But I'm hoping I can be here for a really long time. Like, that's kind of when I look at think about maybe my career of moving down. Like, I want to be somebody like a Leslie Broadhurst at Randall, or Pillion at Amarillo. Some of those guys they go in, they establish their culture. And then they're just competitive year in and year out. And you get to see kids as they grow up and be, in that community for so long. And like, that's kind of a goal of mine. Or, if I were to look at a career, 30 years down the road or whatever it is, go like, it was worthwhile. It was cool. So I'm hoping that's what we have here.
And, we did kind of go down that faith route. But for the coaches that's not a part of their life, I think you still take the mentality of, all right, this is where I am, and I'm not going to look beyond this. I'm going to be where my feet are, and I'm going to do my very, very best, learn everything that I can here. And then if an opportunity comes up, I'll take it. I think if you do that, that doesn't guarantee that you win everywhere you go, but maybe it guarantees that you make an impact everywhere you go. And I think that's a goal that we can all have.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. That if you're working hard, you have a good, work ethic, that you care about people, that you try to go above and beyond. Like, I know in my situation, when I was at Northwest, my first few years there, that I wasn't the varsity assistant. I was football as well as basketball, and football's not my main thing. My dad and my grandpa loved football. They played college football. I was the one that broke off and decided to play hoops. So it was something I enjoyed, but it wasn't my love. It wasn't my passion. But through that opportunity, it opened up a lot of doors. I was able to be on staff, with Mike Hatch there at Northwest and Travis Edwards. I got to play for Mike Hatch my senior year. So, yeah. So, I mean, there were so many things that opened up doors to being a part of those, state championship qualifier teams and stuff, and be on staff there, that I wouldn't have had the opportunity if, I didn't get a chance to get my foot in the door and be a football coach and work with those people and build a lot of those relationships. And those football coaches I talk to all the time. I still talk to the head coach, Bill Poe there. I consider him as kind of a mentor, and being able to talk. And, every time a job has come up or something's come up, he's somebody that I've called to pick his brain about, his opinion and things. And through that small opportunity, I felt like I made the most out of trying to be a football coach, even though it wasn't my main passion. But because I felt like I did a good job and focused on it, that it opened up a lot of other opportunities and things down the road that wouldn't have been in place if I had just been a basketball guy that was just standing on the sideline, not doing anything because I had to coach football.
Yeah, I think one of the best things that we can do to work on our craft and to be maybe a little more well-rounded is to coach outside of our sport. I had never planned to do that, but at McKinney, the AD came to me one day and said, "Hey, I need you to do me a favor." And I thought, well, we all know what that means. It's not a favor. Like you're about to tell
Other duties as a
yeah. And and I want you to volunteer mandatorily. And so he said, "Hey, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to coach volleyball." I said, "Well, I've never done that. Like I played sand volleyball in college for fun, but that wasn't like real." And he's like, "You'll figure it out." So I did B team 1 year, and then the next year B team, and then the year after that, like 2 weeks into the season, the head coach got fired. They bumped everybody up, including me, to A team, but didn't put anybody in B. So I had A and B. I needed to go through that because one, I didn't want to do it. And I was pretty frustrated that I had to do it. But like we ask our players to do things that they don't want to do sometimes. But then all of a sudden here I am as a coach, an adult, being asked to do something I don't want to do. My attitude stinks. But also it was great for me to figure out like, okay, the way I communicate, does it work with freshman girls? Like, can I get a group of freshman girls having fun in practice, working their tail off, embracing mistakes, improving? Can I learn something new? Like I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with basketball. And to your point, that I think that experience made me a better teacher, and not just in basketball, but in the classroom, in the same way that football experience, molded you and helped you in a lot of ways. I think we have to be careful if we have these other duties, and I'm really talking to myself now too. If we have these other duties, you're asked to do these other things, man, like be all in and don't be resentful and have your eyes open to learn. I wish I would have done that sooner with volleyball. Probably would have had more fun, but it ended up being a great time, man. The Killer Bees, they were great.
The Killer Bees?
That's what we called ourselves. And I don't know. I just started calling our B team that the Killer Bees because we were actually pretty good and beat some people. Then one day, and the announcements came over and said, and the Killer Bees win again. And I was like, wow, like we've arrived. They're saying it on the loudspeaker. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny how some of those situations that you feel like are not, what you want to be a part of or be in, like it's kind of the dose of medicine that you need.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Scoreboard Media. Scoreboard Media works with high schools across the country to run professional sponsorship programs on their LED scoreboards. Whether you already have LED and you just want to supercharge the revenue, or you want to use sponsorship revenue to buy new LED video scoreboards, Scoreboard Media can help. They work with sponsors and advertisers locally, regionally, and nationally who want to connect with your school's community. Email info@scoreboardmedia.com to start the conversation and see what's possible.
Multi-sport athletes, I feel like we're tackling a lot of issues that I struggled with over the years. And so maybe you can help me and others. Like you mentioned being at Ponder, you have a lot of multiple sport athletes. How do you make it work for them and keep it to where it's a healthy environment?
I think it's important that, while they're in another season, let them focus on that. Don't try to pull them so much in another direction of like, hey man, you got to be in the gym. You got to be in the gym. And I'll remind them and, I'll keep them in the loop about what's going on. And I definitely I know with basketball, it's such a skilled sport. Like it's, you lose that touch so quickly if you're not, working on your craft. So there's kind of a fine balance of that. But also sometimes distance makes the heart grow fonder. Like if they get a chance to be out of the gym away from you a little bit, that by the time, that season's done, they're ready to transition into doing something different and competing in a different game and way and be around different coaches and stuff. And so I think there's definitely ways that you can make it work. And then it goes back to the kind of first part of our conversation, like availability. Like I need to try to be somewhat available to where if a football player gets out of practice, they practice in the mornings, they can come in the evening after school and get some shots up and do some ball handling. And, if they're in season, like you're not playing 5-on-5, like you're not playing live, we're going to take those away from you so that we minimize any chance of injury. But, we can work on some skill. We can do a little bit more stuff like that to be able to kind of keep that touch and keep your skill kind of progressing in the right direction. But I'm also going to be flexible. Like we're like for our school, like I want to see Ponder do well in everything. Like if all sports are succeeding, then that just like is a huge shot of energy into the mindset around the school, the mentality, the school spirit. And so, I'm not going to try to punish a kid that if they're competing for the Ponder brand to be angry at them because it's not just for me, it's for us. And so it's hard. Sometimes it's a bit of a balancing act because, we ran into a situation sometimes this summer that, we had kids playing 7-on-7 and we didn't have everybody to play in some of our basketball tournaments. And, for me, it being my first year coming in, like I'm trying to view everybody. I'm trying to get a sense of like where we're at, and I couldn't do that. And, there's parts that are frustrating about it, but also at the same time, like a kid's competing for Ponder, they're getting better for Ponder. It's not like they're sitting at home eating Cheetos. Like, I mean, if they're sitting on the couch, just playing 2K and not doing anything, that's a completely different story. But if they're out competing and doing other stuff and being active and doing something else that they enjoy, then I don't feel like I can really get mad about that. Like we have to be willing to share. And I feel like if I'm supportive of football and other sports like that on campus, that hopefully when it's my season and it's time to play basketball and those kids that cross over, that we've got a good working relationship and they'll kind of, they'll be able to return the favor of let the kids be in the gym, let them compete, let them be all in for basketball. And when that's done and they got to transition to baseball or, they want to go play tennis or track or cross country, whatever it is, that we're going to help each other out during those seasons and let those kids maybe focus on that sport a little bit. But then again, be available because basketball is tough. Like if you're not playing basketball all the time, like it's just hard to be competitive.
Yeah.
You have to, again, there's the balancing act to it, but that's kind of the ways that I've tried to approach the situation with multi-sport athletes and celebrate it and be okay with it.
I think it's a great reminder about giving them a break from us. I know we all think that our players being around us the entire year is the best thing for them.
I'm the coolest guy ever.
Why would you want to be here? But and listen to this voice all the time and snap, like we snap all the time. Like that has to get a little bit annoying. You need a break. But I think that kids, every player, they either like it, they love it, or they live it. I would imagine a lot of our multi-sport athletes like basketball. Maybe some of them love it. I don't think they live it, or else they wouldn't be doing anything else, right? But I think if they like it, then a break is probably really necessary, and we need to honor that. I think you're right on the money. If they're doing anything for our school, Ponder, if it's faith, then one, we need to be interested in that. So show interest and act. Don't act like doesn't even exist. Like, how did your game go? Man, I'll be there. I can't wait to watch you. Man, you killed it. Great job. Oh, you guys lost. Don't worry about that. Like, you fought hard. We need to show that interest in them because I think that matters. And then, like, you nailed it, man. Be available. Have the gym open, but they already know they're missing stuff. They know that. Don't make them feel that even more. And as a younger coach, I think I passive aggressively made them feel like they were missing out even more than they already were. And I think we got to be careful with how we say things to them. And then ultimately, if a kid loves football, let's just take football for it. Could be baseball, but if he loves football and I love that young man, I love that person. Why would I want them to stop doing something that they love? If I'm truly in this for kids and a kid that I care about loves that, man, I'm going to support the crap out of that. But that doesn't mean, and this is to myself, but to any coach, like that doesn't mean that we don't have honest conversations and we don't talk about natural consequences. Natural consequence of not shooting a lot is your shot does not get better. Natural consequence for these other guys being in the gym is that when you get back, you'll feel a little bit out of it, but don't worry. Just like we want to take a little bit of, I know you're going to make mistakes when we're trying this out. You take the pressure off their back by acknowledging that. I think we acknowledge that with our multiple sport athletes, but let them know that we're not going to hold it against them. They're not going to be penalized because they've been competing for us. They're not going to be penalized, and we're going to give them time. But I think it's good to have those honest conversations.
And that's, I think, being someplace like here, that's probably, something that's a little bit more established as far as kids are very accustomed to doing a lot of different things, doing extra outside of school, going to training or playing for an AAU team or, something like that, along with playing some of these other sports. And it was something that I felt like I struggled with at Bridgeport. Just for example, kids weren't used to that. It was just, we go from this to this to this to this, but there was no extra outside of those sports. And so, like you said, there's natural consequences to it. If you're not working on your ball handling and shooting, but we get into a game basketball season and you want to beat these top teams and be a competitive program and make the playoffs and do all that, well, then you're going to have to, during baseball or football season or track, once you finish that, come in for 15 minutes and do ball handling. Come in for 15 minutes and on the gun and get 200 shots up. If you just do that day in and day out, that's a lot. That stacks up. It doesn't have to be a crazy workout, but just, again, setting that expectation of stay kind of primed. You're going to pillar off your basketball skills, but also you need to be doing it. And again, that's hard because me and you are live-it guys, man. If the gym was open, I was in the gym. I love playing basketball. I'll still play with them sometimes. I hopped in
for you. Enjoy playing
the other day, and I said, guys, I'm staying for 2 minutes, and I got to go back to work. And I played for a long time. It's just fun. It's fun. It's when you're playing and competing and doing something that you enjoy, it's fun. And if you're a live-it guy, that's what you eat, sleep, breathe, and it's hard to sometimes sympathize with other people that aren't like that about basketball. And that's, because I'm an all-in obsessive personality type. And so if it's, we're playing basketball, we're doing basketball, man, we're gung-ho about it. And not everybody's that way, but they can still be a tremendous asset to the team, even if they aren't like that. But there's still standards and expectations. And if your team is full of live-it guys that are in the gym constantly and they're working, and you got some light guys coming around, again, there's that natural consequence to it of it's not that I'm not holding against you that you play other sports. There's 10 other guys that are better than you that are in the gym all the time. I can't really control that. There's that balancing act for sure.
I think too, you got to sometimes be okay with not everyone being happy with you. And I think as coaches, that's hard. I think perfect world, man, I would like for everybody to feel valued and for everybody to get a little court time and for everybody to feel like playing in our program was a good thing for them, their families. But we all know the odds of that happening, it's not going to. And so we have to be okay with if we're doing everything right to support the kids. And also with sometimes there's a style of play that may be easier for football players to transition into if they are a bigger kid and you play a style where they're allowed to stay around the basket or maybe screen more. It's a less skilled spot, where they have to handle, shoot, and do stuff. I think that's an easier transition and may make it better for them. A 5-out system like ours, where every player, the expectation is that they can shoot it, they can handle it to a degree, And if you can't, it's going to be hard for you to find time. Golly. So what's happened, I feel like, is players have come in, they feel the tension of like, I am not as comfortable right now with the ball. So some of their time suffers. And then sometimes you get blamed for coach doesn't like football players. He doesn't like multiple sport athletes. No, I do like them. But also, this is the way we play. And if you're better than some of our straight basketball guys in doing that, you'll play. But like you said before, it's all about the amount of time. Growing up, one thing my mom was really good with me was scaring the crap out of me about there's always someone else working harder and doing more. You always have to assume that. And so that made it me more of a live it guy. Well, not everybody's like that, but to kind of wrap my whole point up here is we have to be okay, do our very, very best to make it a healthy transition and to make them feel wanted, but be okay with some guys being disappointed and upset.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's on it. Like there's a story my dad loves telling all the time is like when I was maybe a 7th or 8th grader, something like that, I invited a bunch of friends over because they just put in, one of the nice in-ground goals, like sweet, like NBA style, the gorilla goals,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that's what I've been
Hang on this rim.
Yeah, yes, the breakaway rims, lower it down to 7 foot, and act like, you're Michael Jordan or LeBron or somebody like that. And so, I got one of those goals, and so I invited some friends over to play. Well, it's during the summer, and it's hot. It's hot outside. We come home. It's like on a Friday. It's hot, and we go outside for about 2 minutes. All right, we want to go back inside and play Xbox. So they all go back there. I stay outside and shoot. My dad went back to my room to try to find me, and he notices, like, where is he? And he said, I heard the ball bouncing in the driveway. I walk out, and he said, you were so like, I was so mad sitting there. And he was like, what's wrong? And I was just like, I invited them here to play basketball. I want to play basketball, and they're mad because it's hot outside. Like, who cares if it's hot outside? Like, we're here to play hoops. Like, that's what this goal is for. And like, again, that was kind of a teaching moment for him. Like, there's other people that aren't going to have the same dedication as you, and you have to find a way to manage that and manage some of those expectations, but also still embrace who you are. I love being in the gym, and that's not going to change. And I'm going to do a lot to give opportunities for those that want to be in the gym. And it's not to hold anything over their head. It's just, I love basketball, and I want to give a kid every opportunity to be the best player they can be.
And did you always handle it so well or early? And when I say early on for you, you've been doing this for how long have you been coaching now?
This will be year 3 of being a head coach, but it'll be Wells and public. So,
yeah. So 12 is a long time. When you're first starting out, did you have this type of healthy reaction to players not loving it or living it as you do now?
I probably don't. So it's, being at Northwest, Northwest was so big school. So, we had a few kids that crossed over, but it was never really that much. It's kind of when I got to Bridgeport, all my team played football. Like my first year was, I had five seniors. One had a year of varsity experience, and he had barely played the year before. The other 4 were football players that hadn't even played basketball in 2 years. So it was like, it was just learning to manage that. But again, I felt like I needed to provide them opportunities to be able to be there. And kids started gravitating towards it. It was moving in the right direction for sure. It was going to take a little time.
Let me jump in. Like I think I phrased it wrong. Was so you talked about that story of you being so mad that they didn't want to work as hard as you, and realizing that others didn't. When you first started coaching, and you were encountering some players that just didn't want to like it or love it or live it, how did you handle those? Because you have a really, I feel like, a good way of handling it now. Were you like that when you started, or is it taking you time to get there?
It's taken me time, because even as I was a straight A student through high school and college. And so to sit in front of a classroom of kids that don't have that same make an A or bust mentality, man, it's just like a shock to the system. And I would always get, I'd always come home so frustrated and stuff. And, my wife would be like, people aren't like you. Some people don't really care and try as hard. My wife still to this day would make fun of me. I would make flashcards, read the flashcards on a recording, and then I would I would burn CDs and listen to the recording of that information, like prior to test and stuff. Like that's how, like,
That's intense. You and I were different, very different there. In the game, I think the same. I can't say my habits as a student lined up anywhere near my habits as a basketball
like,
player.
the more I look back on it, I go like, you wasted so much time. Like, why were you like that? But so, yeah, I mean, I mentioned it before, I have a bit of an obsessive personality. So if I'm kind of doing something, I tend to go all out and crazy with it. And so, no, I probably haven't had as much of a healthy perspective of that all the time. And I think with the new like rules on UIL that we can practice during the summer and, we have a little bit of time and stuff like that, like it even makes it more of just like, well, we need kids to be here. We need kids to be here. But also at the same time, like it is summer. It is a break time. So where's that fine line of, is it a competitive advantage to use every single day for basketball, or do we need to tailor it off during the summer or, different points of the season? Because some kids are just like it kids.
Yep. One thing I wanted to do is lessen more and more the opportunities for my players to feel like they're letting me down. I want to take them out of that ability. And I think the more that, like you said, in busy times, the more that we require stuff, or the more that we make it like this is an expectation that you don't miss during the summer. Like, the moment that you kind of lay something down like that, and my kids take trips, like they have lake houses places, and in our whole school, here's another, Faith has been so good for me. I don't want to feel like I've given up. I don't feel like that. I feel like I have just figured out a way to dial back that part of the game that you and I both lived. I had an AD once tell me, it was great advice. He said, Matt, we're the weird ones. Like, these kids are not weird. We're weird. Most of them aren't. We're weird. And I think those are kind of the people that become coaches a lot of times, are the ones that just like, I still need to have a team. I can't play anymore. Where's my team? I'll coach a team. But I think, and our whole school, every class takes a trip during the summer. They call it SLU, Student Leadership University. Like, our freshmen will go for a week. All sophomores will go for a week. Our juniors. So when am I going to have everybody together? Like, rarely. So I take the attitude of it's available, and I'm going to celebrate you when you're there, but I'm not going to let it become something where they are reluctant to come around me or look me in the eye, or our relationship suffers because they feel like they've let me down. And I feel like that's a good place to be. I would love it to be like, listen, gym's open. You're all going to be there. I don't know where that happens anymore. Maybe at Ponder, maybe at Lipan, but no, I think it's just kids are busy now.
Yeah, they are. And I mean, again, we've talked about the fine line to everything. I mean, to be competitive and be in a spot to win, you have to have guys that are willing to do a lot extra and stuff like that. And so I think there's also, there's a place of, for our jobs, it's relying upon teenagers to perform at a competitive level to make our situation sustainable. So there's a little bit of internal pressure that I think sometimes gets deflected towards the kids, because we know that if I can't get these kids into a place that is competitive, that I'm going to have to pick up my family and I'm going to have to move somewhere else. I'm not going to be able to stay there. And so I think there's a little bit of probably internal chaos, and that probably goes on with that.
It's our job, but we still got to remember that it's their game. Our job,
yeah,
their game. And we can't expect them to look at it the same way that we do. It is important for our families. There is a little bit of life and death at times to it, but not for them. Not for them.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes back to the point we're talking about of just trying to make practices fun and stuff. I think you're going to get a lot more involvement when your practices are fun and you're empowering them to be a better player. we're going to get to a part of this season and I'm going to have some honest, tough conversations with some kids about either they're not going to get to make the team or, their role might not be as heavy on the offensive side as what they might hope for. But you know what? When this season is done and you got some more time, I'm going to support you. I try to be somewhat three different coaches sometimes. There's kind of like preseason, in season, and then off season, summer. You have to be different. And that's something else again that Coach Sledge, I thought was really good at balancing of you have to, like, if you want a kid to be able to shoot, you can't get mad at them because they're not a shooter right now. Now, if we're in season and we're trying to win a game, like we have to go with our best people. But if it's summer and we want a kid to shoot, we have to let them shoot and live with the result, because if we don't let them practice and get some game reps in those, those summer league games or the shootout schedules and stuff, if we're just mad about every shot that they take, like how are they ever going to get better at it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good word. And I think you could even take that to maybe your sub-varsity development. Like if we want to run and gun and shoot 30 to 43s a game as a varsity team, like I said, I don't recruit, even though I'm at a private school. I don't recruit kids. It's hard to get into faith, but whoever gets here, that's who I coach. And so at my junior high, 7th, 8th, they're all allowed to shoot threes. They're not. Our coaches cannot tell them not to, and it doesn't matter if those dudes hit the backboard only. Like they are going to learn what it's like to be open and to let that thing fly, because it is the most fun part of our game. The most fun part. And then sub-varsities, it's the same thing. And our sub-varsities lose games sometimes because we shoot so many open, like it's within our shooting scale. We shoot so many open threes and we can't hit them. We get a ton of offensive rebounds. Like we've looked at some stats and charted some things sometimes. Like we'll shoot so many more shots than our opponent and lose by 20. But in my mind, if I want them to buy into skill work, then I want them to have the freedom to try those things in games that they're working on. Sub-varsity. And then, but what happens is because a lot of people, when they hear about a free-flowing system or 5 out and everybody gets to shoot if they're open, they say, what if the wrong guy's shooting? Well, hopefully we train them enough to not have a wrong guy on the floor. If you're a wrong guy, you're probably not on the floor, right? But I think you get there because of how you train them when they're young and allow them to play when they're young.
Again, it's definitely a fine line, because again, you're trying to win, but also at the same time, like you are trying to empower kids and teach them to play the game. And that's honestly one of my pet peeves, when younger, especially youth age coaches just want it to be so controlled and stuff. Just let it fly, let it be chaotic. And like, I wish somebody would have just made me handle the ball more, because I was a little bit bigger kid in middle school and stuff. And it was always just like, well, let him play post, let him do this. And it's like, but now I'm 6'3". By the time I was getting into college, I wish I had some more ball handling attributes to my skills that I definitely could have gained growing up if somebody would have just said, you got the ball, you can dribble it. But it was like, oh, give it to so-and-so, only let them shoot, only let them do that. And it was like, and so, yeah, it honestly always, it bothers me. And it's conversations that I've had with some people about, man, if you want your kid to fall in love with basketball, like it can't be it has to be, let's run a set play every trip down the floor and all that stuff. Like it has to be more free flowing and open, and teaching them concepts and letting them because again, cones can make it look really pretty, but when there's actually a body in front of you and the bullets flying in the context of the game, can you play and make a decision on the fly and then get to a point where those good decisions are leading into a good result of a made shot and getting to a high percentage look and stuff. And I think I try to gear our practices that way, just making it so chaotic, and take no dribble. Like we did 5-on-5, no dribble today, just because they're so used to, I think kids just dribble just to think. Like they're really not trying to dribble the air out of the ball or be hot sauce or Kyrie and and all that stuff, hot sauce, and one that's kind of dating. They don't even, they don't know who. Oh, they don't. The kids now they don't know what and one was anymore, so they don't know who hot.
Right.
But you know, I think they just dribble to think, and so if you start taking that away from them and making them a passer and making them a fast decision maker, like it's a shock to the system. Like I think something. I probably have maybe lost a couple of kids along the way. Like I know at Bridgeport, there's a few kids that didn't play because I think the style of practice was geared towards absolutely just exposing weaknesses in their game and weaknesses in their skill that it got frustrating because there wasn't some success in that. And, you know, the message of getting out of your comfort zone is something that's always in the forefront of learning and developing and stuff. But some kids don't like that. Fans, when they come to a game, they don't like that. Or why do they play that? I'm sure you get that a lot. Of why do they play that style? They shoot so many threes.
The parents saying stop shooting threes, and then it's got to be tough when they hear the coach saying, nope, keep going. It's great.
Uh-huh.
Are you ready to level up your team skill development? Well, Bology is here to support you in driving accountability and skill development. The Bology app is more than just tracking. It's a resource for enhancing skills, knowledge, and mindset across your program. Join coaches all across the country using Bology to simplify training and empower your athletes. Let's build consistency, accountability, and skill development together.
Hey, Coach, before I get you out of here, the speed round. These are going to be quick questions. The first thing that pops in your head, blurt it right out.
All right.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate chip cookie dough, probably.
Nice. Greatest shooter of all time?
Steph Curry.
Favorite superhero?
And I'm honestly not like a superhero comics guy, so I'd probably say maybe Spider-Man, I guess. I don't.
That's fair. That's a tough one. I've been, debating on whether to keep that one in or not. I'm wondering, like, for some people, the superhero they choose, what does it say about them? I don't know. But I've actually had a lot of coaches be like, yeah, I'm not really into that. And then I'm just kind of like, well, dang it.
Guess when I kind of would watch those, it was Spider-Man. Those tended to be kind of, I guess, my more favorite superhero movies. But I honestly don't watch very many movies now to begin with. So
yeah,
any new Marvel movie, anything like that, I haven't seen them. No.
That's fair. Top 3 dinner guests that you'd like to have, and it can be across any time period.
Wow. That one might take some thinking. I would say probably Dirk Nowitzki, just basketball. He's my favorite all time. That's my GOAT. I know he's not the GOAT, but that's my GOAT. Man, history. It'd probably have to be somebody like, I don't know, like a Martin Luther King Jr. or something like that. If somebody with a different perspective of a different time period that lived a completely different life than what I lived to gain some of that perspective and knowledge. Somebody else. Man, I've listened to your speed round so many times. I should have been prepared for this one.
Yeah, you knew it was coming.
I know.
You got one more in you? One more person?
History.
Yes, sir. And you had Martin Luther King Jr., right?
Yes. I'll throw in, I don't know, this is probably a weird one. I'm a big John Mayer fan, so John Mayer.
Wow, that's first. That's a first.
I bet it is. That's kind of a weird off the wall one, but I'm a John Mayer fan. I like that. He's kind of an odd character, but
John Mayer came out. His first CD came out when I was a sophomore in college or so, and loved it. And he actually came to Waco, watched him live. It was really good. What happened to him? Is he still doing stuff? Is he still putting stuff out?
He is. Yeah, he's kind of gone. He's gone a little bit of like a country direction, which was different. And yeah, I think he tours a lot with like the Grateful Dead now as just like a guitarist and stuff. So more on the guitar side of things, I guess. But
best basketball movie of all time.
Let's go. Has anybody said Air Bud yet?
Think so.
Air Bud? I'm not going to go with Air Bud, but I think that'd be a funny one. We'll go.
It'd have to be somebody that like has really young kids that just watched it or something.
Yeah. I'll say probably Coach Carter.
That's a good one. Yeah. Texting or talking?
Talking.
You and I are both in Texas, so for high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
1,000% shot clock. And let's install the charge circle while we're at it.
I agree.
Let's stop undercutting kids and taking charges behind the basket.
I completely agree. Favorite holiday?
4th of July, because it seems like it's the only time to get off for a coach nowadays.
It's the coach's holiday. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Up 3 on defense with 5 seconds left or less. Do you foul or no foul?
I was prepared for this one. So I will say probably foul, because I did see a graphic on it the other day. It's like, what do they have to do? They have to make the shot if you let them shoot it, or if you foul them, they have to have, several other dominoes falling in line. So I'm going to go foul.
What book would you give someone?
Let's see. Either Let Them Lead or Lead for God's Sake. Those two are really good. I think it's called Let Them Lead. I'd have to,
Let Them Lead.
let me see on my Audible. I think it's called Let Them Lead. I might be messing with that title.
Do you like to listen to books?
I do. I've been bad the last 2 months, but I've really tried to start reading, or at least doing audiobooks more and stuff. I've been screenshotting all your monthly books that I've been trying to screenshot them and add them to my library.
In case people don't believe, I have the last 3 or 4 months, I've been reading 4 a month. But I realized like the summer, it's really easy to do that. And in the school year, it's hard. And so it's September right now, but I'm a little bit behind this month, but I'm still trying to. I like to do 4 because Buzz Williams is incredible. His yearly picture that he puts out, I'm like, golly.
I've been trying to.
Wonder too, though. And I've been trying to. Who was it? What's the stoic guy? Ryan Holiday. He said, give yourself permission to stop reading books that you don't like, or to skip parts of a book. And I don't know what it is where I felt like, okay, if I start it, I have to read every word in that book.
Oh, yeah.
But he's, I think, kind of helped me. Like, you know what? I'm a little bored with what we're talking about. What's the next chapter? Like, so not that I barely read any of them, but I that's helped a little bit.
Gotcha. Yeah, the Lead for God's Sake is a good one, and then the Let Them Lead is by John Bacon. That one's really good, and it's from a coach's perspective as well.
Two more here. A place you most want to travel, or your favorite place to travel.
I'm really not much of a travel person. I would love to just be home. If it's going to be something, I will probably, I do enjoy golf. I don't get to play it very much, but like if I could go to St. Andrews or something, like that would be a cool kind of bucket list item, I guess.
Yeah. Last one, in basketball as a player, who is the GOAT?
Michael Jordan for sure. Again, my GOAT's Dirk, but Michael Jordan is the best player.
That's a great point. I think favorite player and GOAT are different, because Pistol Pete's my favorite player.
Well, he's awesome too. Yeah.
But he's not the GOAT, and Jordan is.
Jordan is for sure 1,000% the GOAT. There's no more debating after that.
Yeah. Coach, this has been so much fun, man, to get to spend almost 2 hours with you. So thank you for giving up so much of your time, but getting to learn more about you. And I love Ponder. I've always been a big fan, and I just can't wait to see the amazing things that you do there with that program, but just really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. And like I said, I've been a long time listener, and this has been a highlight for me. So
I appreciate that.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.